not wanting to exist, when the old self is done and the new one hasn't arrived yet. There have been two distinct seasons in my life when I didn't care whether I lived or died. I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't planning anything. I simply felt done. Done performing, done expecting, done trying to become some version of myself I thought I should want, done believing I had life figured out. The first time this feeling appeared was right before I stopped drinking. The second time came years later, and I allowed myself to grow still. What surprised me most wasn't the heaviness of the feeling. It was how quiet it was. No drama, no despair, just a profound indifference toward existing as I had been. A misunderstood feeling. Recently, I listened to a talk referencing Carl Jung, whose work deeply influenced early approaches to addiction and spirituality. One line stopped me in my tracks. The desire to not exist is often misunderstood. It is not a wish for death. It is the ego dying. That landed. Because what if this feeling, the one we rush to escape, fix, numb, or pathologize, is actually a threshold? What if it isn't a sign that something is wrong, but that something is ending? The ego, the pink cloud, and what I claimed anyway. In recovery spaces, there's a term called the pink cloud, a phase of lightness and optimism that's often treated with suspicion. You're warned it won't last. You're told you'll fall. The ego always comes back. What most people don't know is that the term originated in psychological discussions about ego detachment. When I stopped drinking, people said I was on a pink cloud. I owned it. I was happy. I felt free. I was excited to see who else I could be. I felt alive in possibility. So I named my business Pink Cloud Coaching. Even though I understood that the phrase wasn't meant as a compliment, it made all the difference in my journey. And maybe that's where my work truly began. Because while I deeply respect that many people are helped through traditional recovery models, I also know, through lived experience, that for some of us, returning again and again to the same identity, the same stories, the same framing, keeps us circling instead of evolving. Stories, egos, and the risk of staying the same. Storytelling matters. I tell stories too. Stories help us feel less alone. But when stories become exaggerated, rehearsed, or rewarded for their intensity, something subtle happens. The ego gets louder. And instead of moving forward, we stay anchored to who we were at our worst. That's not a judgment. It's an observation. In my work, I don't want you to believe me. I want you to question everything, especially the assumptions you've made about your life, your patterns, and what this moment means. Because curiosity is far more powerful than certainty. When you stop wanting to exist. When someone reaches the place of not caring whether they exist anymore, the instinct is to panic or to try to get back to who they used to be. But what if that's the wrong direction? What if this moment isn't a failure but a doorway? Not wanting to exist as you've been may be the psyche saying, this version of you is complete. And when we don't understand that, we repeat patterns. We return to numbing behaviors. We grasp for familiarity even when it no longer fits. Not because we're weak, but because we're standing at the edge of something new without a map. I don't have the answers, but I have better questions. I've spent my life observing, listening, and asking questions. Sometimes too many, sometimes at the expense of my own certainty. But that curiosity is also what makes me a guide. I don't want to tell you who you are. I want to help you ask who you're becoming. Because that space, the one where you no longer want to exist as you were, is not the end. It's a pause between lives. a liminal space, the in-between. And what I see now, what I could never quite articulate before, is this. Pink clouds only exist in liminal space too. They appear at dusk and at dawn, in the brief moments between day and night, between what was and what's coming. So what if this feeling, not wanting to exist, but not wanting to die, isn't a descent into darkness at all? What if it's an invitation to reimagine the space, not as doom and gloom, but as a threshold brushed in pink clouds? In more than 20 years of sobriety, I've had language for recovery, ego, healing, and awakening. But as with most of my findings through lived experience, there wasn't a name for this distinction. That the desire to not exist can be the soul's way of saying, this version of me is complete. This isn't hopelessness, it's completion. And when we misunderstand it, we rush to escape, numbing it, diagnosing it, or trying to resurrect who we used to be. But when we honor it, we allow ourselves to stay in the in-between long enough to notice the sky changing. This is the only place pink clouds can live. And if we're willing to stay present instead of numbing or retreating, it may be the beginning of the most honest chapter yet. You are so loved, and you are not lost. You are in transition.